Over the last 35 years since the Islamic Revolution, Americans have come to associate Shi'ism with the hostage-taking in Iran, with Hezbollah blowing up the American embassy in Lebanon. They forget that Shi'ism can just as easily be our allies as our adversaries. Ever since the Islamic Revolution in Iran, the Iranians have claimed to be leaders of the Shi'ites. Nothing could be farther from the truth. The fact of the matter is, what the clerical rule that Iran represents is actually a minority view in Shi'ism. And we know that most Iranians themselves don't even particularly care for the type of government they have. My colleague Ahmad Majidyar and I at the American Enterprise Institute just released a major report on the Shiites in the Middle East. What we did in a series of interviews and travel throughout the region is on a country-by-country basis, we went through all the countries surrounding Iran, and we looked at how the Shia communities in those countries actually resist Iranian influence and argue that if the United States had a more nuanced policy, then we could actually peel those Shia communities away from Iran and roll back Iranian attempts to export the revolution. The United States needs a nuanced policy towards each and every Shiite community. Just because you're Shiite doesn't mean you come from the same cookie cutter. We need separate policies looking at the problems of Shiites in Bahrain, Shiites in Lebanon, Shiites in Azerbaijan, and we need to be able to ensure that these communities are adequately able to resist the pressure they face from the Iranians and the Revolutionary Guard. Most Shiites outside of Iran don't particularly care for Iranians either on an ethnic basis or on a religious basis. They don't like being dictated to. They don't like the traditional condescension with which Iranians look at Arab communities or Azerbaijan. Therefore, if they can have their own independence, if they can ally separately with the United States, they'd welcome the chance. We shouldn't be deferring Shi'ism to the Ayatollahs in Iran. And the irony is, as the United States too often defers the identity of Shi'ism to Iran, the Shi'ites, not only in Iran, but outside it, both secular Shi'ites and religious Shi'ites, are fleeing as fast as they can from the dictates of people like Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei, who they see as a corrupt leader and not as a legitimate religious figure. If we look at all the Shiite communities as Iranian fifth colonists, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. I was on a bus between Tehran and Qum. The air conditioning broke down on the bus. One of the mullahs on the bus, you could tell from his clerical headgear, asked the person sitting in front of him to take down the window because it was hot in the bus. And the person turned around and said in Persian, "No, you mullahs are all going to hell anyway. You better get used to the heat." The point of this is that most Iranians don't particularly respect the Ayatollahs, whom they now associate with corruption. When you claim to be the supreme leader, like Ali Khamenei does in Iran, when you claim to be the deputy of Messiah on earth, but you have all these other Ayatollahs contradicting you, then that's a pretty good sign that any sort of free theological thought, any free discussion, is going to be your Achilles heel. You can't claim to be the deputy of the Messiah and get contradicted by all these other Iraqi Ayatollahs or Shiites elsewhere. That's why it's so essential for the United States to protect the independence of various Shiite communities. We've got to understand that the problem with the Islamic Republic isn't any particular grievance. It's rather their ideology, an expansionist and aggressive ideology at that. No matter what we do, they're going to lash out at us, so we shouldn't be so worried about painting them into a corner. There's nothing wrong with, for example, preserving the ability of independent Shiite communities to get up and speak and talk about theology and beam it into Iran. And if that presents a challenge or makes the supreme leader uncomfortable on theological grounds, so be it.